Yeah, thank you, Linda. I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's here and everyone who's spoken before me, because I think I've learned a lot in that hour and a half that I've been sitting here. So I actually, yeah, I came across getting down to business. I don't even remember how it was a fly, I'm pretty sure. And I went to my friend Rachel's house with it, and we sat, this is pre-COVID, obviously, when I was 17, turning 18. And we sat on her bed and we were like, hey, we should apply for this. And we were exploring different ideas. I was at Melbourne Uni, and frozen yogurt was it was new at the time. So we used to go for frozen yogurt a lot. And so we started talking about frozen yogurt, and we're like, it's such a cool experience to pick your yogurt and then put whatever you want to put on top of it. And why can't we bring that excitement and that experience to other kinds of foods? And so we did a bit of brainstorming, and Kay applied to getting down to business with the idea of a mashed potato bar, which has a very similar concept. So we, have some mashed potato, and then you have some toppings to go with it. And we set that up in different events and stuff. And it was an incredible idea, I think. We ran a few events. We were both 17, turning 18, doing little catering business for 2 years, setting up muffin bars and pasta bars and cookie bars, because we wanted to bring excitement back to food. And so that's kind of where it started for me, in terms of my entrepreneurship journey as an individual, with Rachel.
Thank you. And I remember when you told me about this mashed potato bar, and I kept saying, what is it? I didn't understand it. And then I started to taste it, understand it. So that was a new and novel business to me at that point in time. Now there's a few around the place.
Yeah.
So what are you up to today? Because you're really doing a lot. So just tell us about a week in your life and the kind of things that you do.
For sure. It's very different today. We obviously, it was called Favorite Fillings. We don't have Favorite Fillings anymore. We've gone on a different path from then. But today my life revolves a lot around advocacy, social impact, and innovation entrepreneurship. So that's kind of the week. I work in the not-for-profit sector. So essentially I now run social entrepreneurship programs. What I've learned from, Linda and Frank and Shona, who I don't know if she's in this call, but these were sort of the first people that believed in what I've got to do when I was very little. And now I've been able to I'm in that position where I can pass those skills to the next group of young people. So I run some of the social entrepreneurship programs. I also run a advocacy facilitation network. So basically skill up other young people from migrant refugee backgrounds to, be innovative in how they speak about the issues they care about. How do you talk to different stakeholders? And I'm always going to remember there was one workshop that Frank ran that stays with me to this day. And, he stood up in front of all of us and said, I'm an introvert, but this is how you network. And he taught us all these little things. And now I tell other young people who come to me and say, I'm an introvert, I can't talk to experts. And I'm like, no, I know someone who's an introvert and he did it, so you can do it too. So those kind of moments really stay with you for a long time. But basically I support young people in advocacy. And then I run an organization called ULEN. And essentially I saw a gap in the kind of life skills and emotional intelligence that was being, delivered, is the word I'm looking for, across Australia. And I thought there was a bit of a gap in how can you make it culturally accessible so that people are not falling through the cracks, and so they can relate to it from cultural background, from the religious background that they come from. So it's not like this new and novel thing that puts them off. And so that's when we started unconventional learning. Also because, these are kind of the spaces where I've learned a lot from. I have a background in psychology, but the most learning always comes from the workshops I'm in, the people I speak to. So it was just kind of like, how do we complement the current education system by giving young people and new migrants different experiences. So that's what my week looks like. I'm doing a bit of that and a bit of this. And I don't know if I can share this here, but I will now that I've said it. But I've also recently announced my candidacy to run in local government. So that's going to be my weeks for the next few months.
Exactly. Trying to run for politics during COVID. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't get out Well, so I suppose one of the things that really interests me about the work that you do now is whether you're seeing other people coming through and thinking, yeah, you know, they've got the skills they need to start a business, or they are starting businesses, and if so, you know, how far down the track are they?
Yeah, I think very honestly, the people that I work with and talk to often have a great idea, and usually it's in response to a social or environmental issue. And what I notice is, you know, they've thought about that idea a lot, they've lived through those experiences, so they're best placed to come up with those ideas, but there is just a little bit missing in terms of the structure. Like, how do I actually now, I've got to say, now what do I do next? That's often the part that's missing. Or I've got an idea and no one is willing to invest in me, or take that risk. That's the piece that's missing. So what I notice a whole lot is the skill and the passion is there, but the structures are not there as much. So we might run, you know, a little program that supports them, and that's just one piece of the puzzle. I think the biggest gap I see with youth entrepreneurship, and something that I've experienced as well, is like there is very little venture capitalists who are ready to put their money there unless they're, you know, taking big risks. It's really hard, of course, to put your money behind a new business, but that little grant that, you know, $1,500 makes a big difference to some of the young entrepreneurs that I work with. So I think I'm not seeing enough of risk taking from the structures that are around us and the systems that are around us to back young people. Because the point is, when the young people I work with go through these programs, it's not the fact that, and you've said this, Linda, already, I've heard it a few times, it's not the fact that that idea comes into fruition and then carries on for the next 20 years, but it's the fact that now they feel confident. And sometimes we'll see people come back 2 years later with a completely different idea, and that's got, you know, become bigger. It's exactly the experience I'm telling you that's happened for me with getting down to business is now like a ripple effect around the people I'm seeing.
That's great, thank you. And I mean, one of the other elements that you brought with you, that you've brought with you over the years, is around social entrepreneurship. So I'm interested in whether you think there are actual differences between commercial businesses and social enterprises, and if so, what those differences are.
I personally don't see a heap of a difference. The biggest difference is whether what you're doing, you know, and Harry mentioned this earlier, like, is it only for profit? And if it's only for profit and money, then I'm like, that's probably not a social enterprise. That is a pure corporate commercial business. But if you have a mission and a vision and this underlying principle as to why you started, I think that even if you don't say you're a social enterprise, you need to be thinking about the impact you're creating, right, as business. So I think it's about the framing of the business in the founder's mind that makes a big difference, and then how you communicate that to the people you work with, to your consumers, to your clients, and how you measure it. So I would say the only difference is that the people I work in social entrepreneurship come with a very, like, the mission is right at the front. They're like, look, we know this is a gap. This is an issue we are seeing. It's affecting us in our health, in our social, mental health, all sorts of things that you see commercial businesses doing. But that mission is right at the front. And they're like, we want to address this. And this is why we want to exist. As opposed to, we want to exist because that's one way of making money. That's been, the big difference.
I think that I was just going to say that I think there is a real sense that we do push back on quite often, where young people and migrants, for example, should start social enterprises. And you'll often find programs that are just about social enterprise, which to me, you know, that's a problem to me, because we're basically saying, yeah, you're young and you should do this for everybody else. Whereas we know, and pretty much all of the businesses that we've spoken to today have a social mission as well, whether that's employing 10 people or 25 people.
Totally.
So they have social impact.
Yes.
I think we need to be sort of expanding that view of what social enterprise is. And as you just said then, it's not... you know, there's purely commercial that doesn't help anyone, and then there's this sort of grey area.
Yes,
well. And
it's always like social enterprise has always been a tricky one. You know, I've been kind of in this sector formally for like 2.5 years, and it's growing slowly, but it's growing. but it's always been something that, because if there's no clear, there's no legal structures for social enterprises in Australia, as they are in the US, they are in not UK, like Europe, parts of Europe. So that's the difference, is we don't have the clear structures, but we have stuff like B Corp that know that, you know, if you do your business and there's some things that you're achieving, okay, that is a social enterprise. And a lot of B Corps are, you know, registered as for profits. So it's not like you have to be a not-for-profit to be a social enterprise. Essentially, it's like, are you measuring the impact that you're creating? Yes, you're measuring it. Is there a gap that you're filling? Is there a mission that you're on? Okay, we can start seeing that this can be viewed as a social enterprise.
Great, thank you. And so the last couple of questions, because we want to move through to the next section, today is about the economic recovery for Victoria during COVID, after COVID. What do you think that we should be doing?
So I think one of the things that I definitely want to see more of these programs, but I do want to see them targeted at young people. And the only reason I bring that up is because I see incredible programs around the country. I know in my local area we have a few as well. But very honestly, like the demographic that's in the room, the experiences that you share make a difference. You know, for me to be a young person next to another young person having the same kind of, well, not the exact same, but similar life experiences, what we're currently battling means we can build a community of practice. We can build a community that shares that. It's very different to me sitting in a room with someone who has a very different life stage, and it's at a different life stage with a different experience. While I'm a huge, and you know this, Linda, I'm a huge advocate for intercultural, intergenerational spaces, I think we also need some spaces that are dedicated to young people, which is why I loved getting Down to Business, because there's a community that's formed there. And it's been mentioned a few times, but it makes a big difference. So I think some targeted programs are really important. I know we also need, I think, what you did, which are like pre-accelerators. So you've got your accelerator and your incubator programs, but some people don't even, like, I didn't think that this was going to be the path I was going on. I was very lucky that my parents were very entrepreneurial, not necessarily starting up businesses, but in the way that they operated in life. So I had some stuff to learn from them, but also in the sense that, you know, we don't even know what the terminology is. We don't even know that this is something that's a possible career pathway. It's not a validated career pathway for young people, you know. How many times do young people go like, you know, when I grow up, I don't like using that terminology, but I'm just going to for the sake of argument. But when I grow up, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be, you know, someone who has my own business. That is not common. And if it is, it's like, oh yeah, go do commerce at UniMelb. But it needs to become a validated pathway. And the way that it's done is that we invest in it through like our programs, but we invest in it through policy as well. You know, how many organizations have social procurement policies that say we're going to use local businesses that are set up by local young people, or local businesses full stop, right? That's how I think we put it in our policy, in our systems. And then on the ground, we set up programs and then they work together and they get, yeah. Sorry, I think about this a lot, so I've got so much to say. I'm going to try and reel myself back in.
No, that's fine. And I mean, we've got lots of business owners in the room. It was actually the largest category that we had in our ticketing system, our very specific ticketing system. Yeah. And so there are business owners here. Their life outcome is that they run a business. They took the risk. True. They do what they love. They're still taking a risk, especially through COVID. It's not easy running a business, 100%. And in fact for a lot of people it's really, really hard. So I think you're right. I just want to follow this idea that it's not something that, you know, kids grow up thinking, I want to be an entrepreneur. So do we need to be creating pathways? If we do, what are the steps to those pathways? And then our final question would be about what would you say to policymakers and politicians to do today?
Yeah, I think
what are the pathways? Yeah.
I've already kind of covered that. I think we need that validation piece is a huge one, right? It means that when you come out of school, you know that that's a valid thing you can do. It means that when you're in year 11 and 12 and you have a little idea, it's something that's supported. It's not like, oh, that's a bit crazy, like, you know, just pick a law career or something. No, like, are our career counselors, my question is as well too, if there's any people working in education here or work in policies, like how much are your career counselors talking to young people or students about this as a valid pathway? And if not, why? What's the thing that's stopping them? Are they afraid because there's not enough support? You know, and for businesses that are here, I think it's about how we set an example. If you can, you know, mentor a young person in your local area who has an idea, or bring them on board to yours. Like, you don't have to be entrepreneurial skills are also used within businesses, and we know this. Costa, you know, is a great example of it. So, you know, how do you set up those skills and then bring them into your local businesses or your smaller, medium businesses, and mentor train from there? Because the skills that they bring are invaluable, in my opinion. But it's biased because I'm a young person, so.
No, that are invaluable. So what I'm thinking, because we've just got a couple of minutes, and I'm actually wondering if there are any business owners on here,
sure,
who also see the value of entrepreneurship, obviously, but who maybe didn't imagine that they would be running a business, and what kind of support they may have needed or wanted back in the days when they did start a business. And the reason I want to know that is because if we're going to get COVID recovery right, we have to make sure there are no barriers. We have to make this really easy for people to get into something. So I'm actually looking, and I think she might be unhappy that I can see her on my screen, which is Jane from the Business of Food.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're actually on my screen. So can I ask you, Jane, what did you need when you started a business? You've heard, you know, young people are talking about, how different was that for you?
Very different. And when I investigated what I needed to start my own idea for a food business, I actually ended up building Australia's first kitchen incubator. So that was 12 years ago. So I had an idea for a food business, couldn't find what I wanted to find, what I needed to make it legal, viable, and so built it. So I'm a little bit different as a business owner, right?
So you came to business as an older person, yeah,
very late.
Yeah, and well, late compared to Costa at 16. So yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
So for me, I mean, everything that Mehak was just talking about then in terms of the steps. What do you think that we should be doing to open this up and look at economic recovery? How do we make this as easy as possible for young people to start businesses, for older people to start businesses?
So I think the programs are a great step in the right direction, but personally, having built infrastructure first and then built the community around it, I think there's a lack of that kind of space where like-minded people can form their own community and, you know, bounce off other people and learn from other people on the same journey. I think there's lots and lots of co-working spaces. The ones that I work out of, because I normally work out of, I work out of 3. One is council run, one is in a shopping centre, and another one is again, also council run. So, but they're not targeted. They're not targeted to any specific pathway or demographic. And so that becomes quite disjointed when you're looking for networking opportunities or like-minded kind of people. So I think there's a little bit of a gap in the market there, maybe.
Can I quickly add on co-working spaces and these infrastructures, Linda? I think they're fantastic, right? I love the idea that we can come to a space and share stuff. But I've seen experiences of, like, you built an infrastructure. So this is a very, very local experience to me, where someone has built an infrastructure of a co-working space. So they've put that label on it, but there's no community around it. And to access that co-working space, I need to go through like 4 different people to verify that I'm a valid young person, that I can be in that space. And so I'm like, if you've put a structure there, why are there so many roadblocks to get to it? And then I've seen other experiences of co-working spaces where it's like so they'll be like, okay, it's free from 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock on Friday every week. And so if you're a young person who's just starting up and you have very little capital, you know, that's the only opportunity you've got. to go into it. So it's like there are a whole lot of what do you call it? Like it's roadblocks or doors that you need to keep knocking to be able to access some of these infrastructures that Jane's mentioned. They're there. I'm not, dismissing the fact that they're there, but how do you make them accessible? Because not everyone is starting from the same place, right? And so I think accessibility is a conversation we haven't started having as much in entrepreneurship as
Right.
we could.
Yeah, that's great. And we know that, people over the age of 25 or 30 often can have no money, for example, but we definitely know that young people up to 21, for example, generally have low incomes. They're generally working in casualised jobs. And so it does make it difficult for them to join infrastructure that might exist, like co-working spaces. So Jane, thank you. And I'm sorry about putting you on the spot for that, but I really appreciate, thank you for that. And Mehak, thank you so much as always. I again hope that the policymakers in the room are sitting here thinking about, we've just had 5 speakers. We've got Dimitri coming up in a minute, but there have been some really important insights about how to reduce barriers, how to increase support individually, and some of the outcomes for young people that will help the recovery during COVID and after COVID. So can I say thank you very much for that, Mehak?
Thank you.
Good to see you. Take care.